So there was a question or two that was raised about the assignment 3.0, and so we'll take a moment to walk through that. Welcome to CSC239 Scientific Computing Applications. Today is 3 October, Tuesday, and basically, if you click on this link, it will open up a screen that looks like this. And this is a view of something in the textbook. So, you were informed in the study guide that most introductions to coding methods do a poor job of demonstrating the principle of self-description. And this is also true in your textbook. So they cover examples using single letter variables rather than using variables that reflect the given name, a data type, and a general purpose, right? So, and you do that in camel case. So here's a screenshot from page 131 of our textbook. What I'd like to do is zoom into the, can we still see the screen there?
Yes.
So this is from the MIT Press view. In chapter 4, we start going into simple programming, and it talks about Python and how it's a scripting, it's sometimes referred to as a scripting language. More precisely, it's interpreted as a programming language, which means that as the programming statements are executed, that's when they're actually turned into code that the CPU can cycle, right? Other languages like C are compiled languages, which means after you create the programming statements, when you compile that code, it turns into machine code, very low level machine code, so it's optimized, right? It's very fast. And so there's some excellent background here about this topic. There's information about how to get more libraries for your Python environment, and whether or not you want to use an integrated development environment where you download something like PyCharm, right? PyCharm is there's a community edition of PyCharm. It's a Python development environment that's got a lot of extra tools. Or you can work command line, right? You can do CLI, command line interface, the hard way, right? And there are advantages to both, right? Now, as we move along in our study guide, you'll notice there's mention about modular approaches to the coding method, right? And this is just something that I wanted to take up here while we were walking through some of that in the textbook. One way to work in a modular manner is to create functions. So what you'll find is that there are examples. I'm going to go ahead and lower the. So one of the ways to work in a modular fashion is to create simple functions and then call the functions. When you define a function, that statement is led by the DEF command, right? And then the name of the function follows. So in this case, I'm defining the main function. And another way that you know that this is a function definition is because of the colon character. So here's a discrete function that prints a string, and so the data type is str for string and hello. So I know that this function prints a string of characters to say hello, right? And so when I define that function string hello, I just follow the name with 2 parentheses and then a colon. And then my programming statements follow. So in this case, it's a very simple function. I'm just going to print, and then in single quotes, greetings, earthling, I come in peace and offer an end to starvation. End quote, and then right parentheses. So when this function is called, when it's used, what you see when it's used is a reference to the name of the function without the colon and without the definition command, right? So here string hello is called or executed. And that's the primary purpose of the main function. So this is a very simple setup. I define some functions, then I create above it the main function. The purpose of the main function is to call functions. Further down, there's a definition. So when this is called, Python knows what to do with it, right? So it reads this and it goes, oh, okay, I'm supposed to print something. And in order for this program to run, here's a common mistake. We define functions, then we define the main function to call each of those functions. In this case, just a single function called string hello. And once all that's in place, the last thing that is often a mistake is to write the Python statement to execute the main function. So we could have multiple functions in here. They could be listed, string hello, string prompt, input whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then all those definitions follow. And after all of those functions are defined, the only thing you have to do is to actually call the main function. So when Python interprets this, it reads all of this into memory, it creates those functions, and then the last statement is, oh yeah, I have to execute the main function. And Python already knows what that means. In this case, the main function, the first statement of the main function is this. And then as soon as it hits this, it interprets that to know, okay, that's a function I have to run. Oh, and here's the definition of the function. So we define the function and then we call it, right? So this is just one example of something you'll encounter as you work the Python assignment, right? Any questions about this before we continue? So as we move on, your textbook explains some things about the basic grammar that you have to mind, you have to pay attention to, right? And another word for basic grammar is syntax, right? So when you structure the statements in a certain way, the word syntax means the basic grammar of the statement. And in order for that to work right, you have to follow the examples. I would recommend that you read this portion of the textbook, right? There's a reading assignment in the textbook. And everywhere you see this, I would do it. So let me just demonstrate what we're talking about here. I'm going to open up my VirtualBox environment, and I want you to do the same thing, right? Here's PG Book. While you have VirtualBox open, never forget, it helps. Check for updates. See if there's an update. If you haven't checked your own machine, the health of your host will also impact the health of the VirtualBox environment, which in turn affects the health of the virtual machine running inside of it. So just, I know I walk through this a lot, but I want to demonstrate good practices, right? Only thing I should see here is antivirus updates, right? Windows Defender updates. But if you have a big one that needs to run, you're better off holding off and clearing those. I'm up to date, right? And I have nothing to update here in VirtualBox. And as I start this, I'm on a laptop, so I'm going to use detachable start just to work around some of the craziness with my power management. Right? If my laptop isn't plugged in, if there's something going on with the battery, you can see down here I have it plugged in and it's fully charged, but sometimes laptops and portable devices have a nasty habit of going to sleep. Can everyone still see the screen here?
Yes, I can see it.
We haven't covered in class already. When you get your PG book, I should have mentioned that you have to load the guest edition CD. I think we covered that already. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you're inside the virtual machine, so you can update the drivers and such. Good afternoon, Khalil. Good afternoon, Khalil. How are you? Did you drop before? Oh, yeah, I guess. All right. So one of the things we want to do as we open up our PG book. We covered how to update this machine, right? Isn't this review? What do we do to update the virtual machine before we start?
I'm sorry, say the question again for me.
What do we do to update the virtual machine itself? We run this.
It's a specific command. I don't know it by heart.
Yeah, I'm going to use the SU for super user option here. I'm going to do that so that it prompts me for a password. That's considered the best way to work root level commands. It's going to ask me for a password, and I'm going to put in my okay, it's saying no password entry is required for apt-get. So let me just do that again. I want these commands. Wait a second. Sudos. There we go. My bad, sorry. Sudo su super user, right? Now I have a pound prompt. I'll put in apt-get update, and I'll chain the command by using ampersand to the next command. So it'll run as soon as this one's finished. Upgrade. So I'm updating the catalog and upgrading the computer. I want to make sure that it's actually pulling from the network. I know that I'm in good shape if I see 0, 0, and 0, right? So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and follow along with some of these examples, right? Because if you take a little time to do this, the stuff in the study guide and on the assessment is going to make a lot more sense. I mean, a lot of times we rush. Don't think we have to spend the time in the textbook for the reading assignments, but it does matter, okay? So I'm going to do the things here that this classic exercise is requiring. And I'm on page 125. Eventually, I'll end up on page 131, and we can talk about the assignment 3.0. So I'll go back to my $ prompt, and I'm going to enter the command Python, right? So it says here, On an Apple Mac, something like the following will appear, right? Whereas on a Linux system, what you'll see, let's make sure that's consistent. It says Python 3.7.7. So what's the first thing that's going to happen is that our textbook is talking about two different versions, and we might need to install an older version of Python in order for this stuff to work right. In fact, talks about the different versions, right? 3.4.1 or higher is not backwardly compatible with version 2.7.6, right? So we have chosen to use version 2. It has proved impossible to ensure that our examples will run in version 3. So if we follow through with this and we run into a snag, it's because of this. And that's why we're taking the time to walk through this, right? So we're going to write a simple program, and most of the examples will work the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter print hello world. And then where you see this left arrow CR, right arrow, that means carriage return. So I'm going to hit enter. Whenever you see CR, you're hitting enter. So that's what I'm going to do in my, I'll hit print. Yeah. Let's see, what was that? Hello world, and then enter. I'm going to hit carriage return or enter, and it's giving me a missing parentheses. So one difference between version 3 and version 2 dot whatever is that you need to have the parentheses, right, to call the print function. So I started to do that instinctively. I'm going to say hello world. And let's see what happens. Now I get hello world. So that's a good example of the differences between Python 2 and Python 3. Okay. Let's continue. So we talk about data types. They want, oh, by the way, this is really important, okay? So when you're ready to leave the Python environment, you want to use Control D. Or you can type in quit, right? So you can press the CTRL key and D or enter quit. Let's see what happens. There we go. I've got my $sign prompt back. From your textbook takes the time to explain these different data types. And oftentimes the Boolean data type can be represented by 1 or 0, or yes or no if you're working with databases, or true or false, or in some cases, a checkbox. An enabled checkbox is true, an unchecked box is false, okay? Strings, lists, dictionaries, tuples. So there are some examples that get into lists and records or tuples, database records or tuples. So it says 3 plus 4, we should get 7, right? It's going to give us some examples. Let's work through these. Well, I got to go into Python again. So Python knows what to do with that statement. It returns 7. This one's a little more complex, right? So an exponent that's written as x asterisk asterisk 0.5, that's what this is. The asterisk asterisk means exponent, right? And 0.5 is 1/2. Okay. And that's also the equivalent of square root of x, right? So if I say 2 dot exponent 0.5 square root of 2, that's going to give me the square root of 2. I should get that response. So let's see if this thing is actually working like it's supposed to. Asterisk asterisk 0.5. I think that's all there was to it. Yeah, that's it. And that's my answer, square root of 2. Everybody see how we're trucking now. Let's move on to 131. So you can follow along with this, and you need to be able to work some of these things, okay? In order to be able to do simple mathematical entries for simple equations with exponents and such, you need to know how to do this. And all you got to do is follow along with the examples. It's actually a very well-written, very systematic approach. Now, when we talk about that grammar, that basic grammar or syntax, right? Remember that the equal sign is actually has nothing to do with equal or equivalence. It has to do with assignment. So I'm taking this number or this mathematical statement, and I'm assigning it into the z variable. So one of the things in your study guide is this idea of abstractions, right? An abstraction is the representation of a thing rather than the thing itself. So that's what an abstraction is. It's representations of a thing rather than the thing itself. And when we're talking about programming, you can think of a variable as a container object that stores data or instructions, right? And that variable is actually an abstraction, right? So the variable represents something else. It represents memory values, data or commands that are stored in that variable. So when you see the word about abstractions, right? The use of objects as abstractions combined with indirection yields a powerful capability. The ability to use a program repeatedly for different input values. That's how Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook, now used by billions of people. Not just Mark Zuckerberg, but any of the titans of technology that have, Google. Google has done similar things, right? So when an operator is used on a variable, it is actually redirected to the memory address to perform that operation, right? So that redirection is called indirection. No, that's the proper term for it. So you're not actually working with that variable directly. In computer terms, you're working with the memory that's stored, and it's just convenient that we have those names. So best way to learn the programming essentials is to create custom programs. And our 3.0 exercise picks up on page 131, where essentially what you want to do is to repeat the coding steps that are shown here in the virtual machine provided by the author, except use your own name to create a notional use that has to do with self-description. Don't, put another way, avoid the use of a single letter variable. Instead of saying I, let's be more descriptive, right? The goal of this assignment is to take this example and walk through this example, but then tell yourself, oh, I'm better than these other knuckleheads. I'm not going to use a variable name as an abstraction to represent my variable, so that when I look at my code, I know what that means. And the example I gave was int for integer instead of lowercase I. Because once again, if all you use is a single letter, I could mean increase, it could mean input, it could mean integer, right? All those things. We want to be specific. If I see int in the context of a variable name, I know I'm talking about whole numbers, an integer. I'm also going to put my first initial and my last name. And I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to repeat the same statement, except I'm going to use. So what I want to do is make sure that this is working properly. Again, because of the version difference. So I'm going to walk through these steps just as it's shown, but then I'm going to go back through there, and instead of using single letter I, I'm going to use, and that's what you should do. When you submit your 3.0 assignment, I should be seeing your first initial and your last name. With whatever label you care to represent. Now I'm using an abbreviation, int for integer, but you could literally spell integer with no space, integer t kentop. You could do that. You could literally spell out the data type instead of using an abbreviation for the data type, okay? So you can use FLT, or you can use the whole word, float, right? So I'm going to go ahead and walk through this real quick. Does anyone have, based on what I've explained so far, does anyone have any specific questions or comments?
Professor,
Yes?
which program were we supposed to use to do this one? Because I had used the Jupyter program. So I wonder if we're supposed to use that app, we were supposed to use the PG book. Because when I did in the Jupyter program, I wasn't given the opportunity to change the float. I was just, once you press run, it gave me float on its own.
Okay, your audio is a little garbled, so I'm catching part of what you're saying. You're saying you weren't able to use the PG book?
I tried to use the PG book, but it didn't work. So I had ended up using the Jupyter book. So I wonder which one you wanted us to use to be
You,
exact, because when I use the Jupyter book, the
you can use,
Jupyter
okay, thank you for explaining a little more. Yes, you can use the Jupyter book, the Jupyter
oh,
notebook.
okay, when I used that one, it didn't give me an opportunity to change float. It just gave me float. Once you run the program, it gave me float on its own.
So did you try PG book? You said it didn't work in PG book.
Well, I personally couldn't get it working PG book.
You do enjoy working in PG book?
Yeah, I like it, but I couldn't have gotten, when I tried to do it last night, it wasn't working. So I had left it until today, and it still didn't work for me.
Okay.
So
Well, did you try updating it and all that stuff?
no.
Okay. Well, that's one thing we can try, and let me try a couple of examples. And once again, this is the Python 3.7.7. And so if there are some commands that don't work straight away, it's because uh, the PG book is using a newer version of Python, right? So I'm just curious here. Can I do, there we go. Does everybody see this?
Yes.
So instead of doing Python, if you use Python 2, what it's going to do is it'll implement the older version of Python. So that way you'll get a one-to-one result. Like right here, when I tried to do print hello world, and it said, oh, you're missing brackets. Watch this. So I'm going to do print hello world. And so I don't have to use the parentheses because it's an older version of Python, right? So that is one workaround if you're finding that you're having problems initially with your walkthrough. So let me try this real quick just to see. I'd like to go ahead and start. This is 130. This is 131. So there's our example. So I'm going to go ahead and start this and see if it works. And yes, you can use Jupyter Notebook if that's easier to manage. Or you could install PyCharm, right? So you could go to the Microsoft Store and I wonder if that's let's see if PyCharm is available here. So that's another approach. Or you could install Python directly. I think I did that on this machine. Let me check real quick. Control panel, programs and features. Yeah, I did. I installed 2 different versions of Python. Probably needs an update. That was back in April. So I have Python 3.11. There's probably a 3.12 and the old version. So I can install Python on my own, on your machine directly, Windows, right? So you can do it like this, right? You can do Python 2, I think. That's the Python 2. So that way you can work it in Windows or on your PG book or in Jupyter Notebook. Now I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and use this example here. So I equals 1. That's actually, I'm going to take the whole number 1. I'm going to assign it to the variable lowercase I. And then I'm going to use the type function to see what type of data is being stored in I. I'm using a whole number, right? Now, if I store a real number or a floating point number, right, float into R, then I can use the type command to reveal what kind of data type is in there. So that's all we're doing here. Now, when I work this in here, I'm going to say I equals 1, and then type I. Does everybody see what's going on here? R equals, I'll use pi, 3.1415, no, 3.1415922712. I'll take it out a couple of places, right? So that's the value of pi, technically. And then I'm going to do type R. That gives me a float data type. Is that the is that what I can turn in? No. No, the assignment reads the assignment reads I should use my own variable name so it's more descriptive. Okay. So let me go back into here and do the same thing again. Instead of doing I equals 1, I'm going to say int tcantop equals 1. Well, is this 1 is assigned to tcantop, right? And now if I look to see what the type is, and then same thing with R, I'm going to say FLT for float, tcantop. That variable is assigned 1415. Let's just leave it at 927. I'll stop right there. Okay, if I look at the type, and I put in FLT, tcantop, I get float. I can highlight this and then submit. Submit this. I got a screenshot of this, so I'm going to do like so. All right. Here's my VirtualBox environment. Right? I can do like this. I can click on my desktop, hit print screen, and go into here, into Paint. I can clip this out. I'm going to use Control X, then Control Z to get rid of that other stuff, and then paste it again. If I save this, this could be, I could save this as, when I go into here, assignments, module 3, data types, I can say, you know, tcantop 3.0 assignment. That's what I upload for 3.0. Any questions about what we're doing here for 3.0? For the 3.0 assignment?
No, no more questions. Well, I don't have any more questions because I previously wanted to, have a meeting with you about it, but I got it now.
Well, the good news is there were others that were asking related questions, and they were having issues with the version of the Python, right? So they were,
Yes, that was my issue.
yeah, they were trying to do that, and they didn't know the secret sauce to pull up Python version 2 dot whatever. And that's frustrating, but at least we know now. And I'm glad to have had a chance to record some of this for everyone. So this is going to be posted. By the way, I did go into here in the resources folder and update the other recordings, the other class recordings. Okay. Now this example of the custom function, right? This is where we're reading section 4.3.3 of your textbook, right? So we've been covering this already. We've been covering the pages from 126 through 131 already. And if you keep reading on to page 139, it talks about the use of functions and how you define a function first, and then you call the function. It's a two-step process when you're creating when you're taking that approach to building custom software. Okay, so this is the same example I just showed on screen. I just used a larger version of font with that's all I did. Used a larger version of font so you could see it easier. If I go up like this, maybe I could go to layout and go landscape. There we go. So that's what we're doing. You're going to save this in text as a .py file, right? That's something that's explained again in the assignment. Save it as a greeting.py, and then when you're ready to run it, you're going to issue that command greeting.py after this keyword in your command. If you don't put Python in front of it, it won't feed the statements into here. So that's all you're doing here is working with those functions. But I want you to experience this first. I want you to go through the exercises with YK in each of these, with each of these three. So it has tutorial 1, 2, and 3. We've been through this before, right?
Yes.
All right. It's really not too complex. Now, automating. Are we ready to move on to another student learning objective?
Yes.
Inside Excel and Access, all of the Office applications actually. So if I go into Word, can everybody see this menu right here?
The Word document?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, we can see it.
If you open your Word document, one of the things that you might notice is that there's no developer menu. So from your view, you don't see developer. And what I'd like to do is show you how to turn that on so that you have a menu option. Otherwise, what you'll have is a series of ribbons for each of these menu options. So I have all these ribbon features and functions. Every time I click the menu, right, the menu header, showing all those different things. And in your Word version, it's probably not showing the developer menu. Is that also, could one of you open up your Word document and show me, or check to see if the developer is missing? Do I have a volunteer to share their screen?
I'm currently not on my PC right now. I'm on phone.
Okay, you're on your phone. Is anyone else on their PC? That's okay if you weren't. Let's see, do we have? Oh, yeah, let's do this. How's Malikwa doing today?
I'm good.
Oh, glad to hear it. Do you have your PC in front of you?
I do, but I don't have that in Word.
You don't have it in Word?
No. This is
Would
probably
would-
my second time joining a class.
Okay, can
Yeah.
do you know how to share your screen? Would you like me to show you how to turn that on?
Yeah, I know how to share my screen.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So you want me to open my PG book?
Actually, if you open up your Word, share your screen where you open up Word.
Just a blank Word?
Yes, just a blank Word document.
Okay.
And then we'll show you how to turn on the developer menu so that you can automate and use macros. And this is one thing we wanted to demonstrate in class for everyone. And Tamira, are you on your laptop right now?
So I'm sharing my screen now.
Yes. So let's go to the file menu, if you would, please. All right, now, depending on which version, we might have to fiddle around a little bit, but let's go to options down at the bottom. Uh-huh. See where it says customize ribbon? Right there. Yes. What I'd like on the right-hand side, scroll down and look for, there it is, developer. Select that, hit OK. Perfect. Now you have a developer menu. Click the developer menu.
Well, maybe let me move there, everybody.
There it is. Click it. Yes. Okay. So watch this. Can you click the view menu?
View?
View, yes. Then select page width. Right below that, page width. But go back to the magnifying glass, a little further to the right. Page width, yeah, perfect. There we go. Now let's go back to the developer menu. I want you to click where it says macros. Or click record macro, record macro. Yeah, cancel this. Record macro, yeah. And you give it a name, call this auto entry. Yes. And
Save
yes,
it?
yes, click OK. Invalid procedure name. So let's go back up and click record macro. See how there's no space there? So
Okay.
I want you to use camel case. Put capital A, capital E for auto entry, right? With no space. And perfect. Yes. Okay. Alrighty. Nice. Now I want you to type my name is, and then put your name. Full name. All right, put a period, make the first letter of the my capitalized. Yeah. All right, now hit stop recording in the upper left corner. No, 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 no,
Oh,
no, no. Share
my
your
bad.
screen. Yeah, share your screen again. In the upper left corner where you were, yes, there. Stop recording. Okay. All right, so what I want you to do is to go 3 lines down. Okay, now click the macros button. See auto entry?
Yeah.
Click run. Oh, look at that. See? So essentially what happens is you turn on the recording, you do things with your mouse and your keystrokes, then you stop the recording, and then you can replay it. Now, it looks to me like there could be a step that's missing, there could be you backed over and put a period, and then you put a capital M in front of the my. So for one reason or another, I think when you bailed out of the screen, that the last couple of steps were missing. But you get the idea, right?
Yep, I do.
Okay, so let's open up Excel now. Any questions so far from the rest?
Quick question. Because I saw for this assignment that we would have to not put, but like install Anaconda or something it's called.
Yes,
What does this have to do with the I happen to use Word.
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
No, the Anaconda, I'm glad you asked that question. So the Anaconda is used for the Python tutorials, the 3.1 assignment.
Oh, okay.
The macros are, I mean, this is something that we wanted to cover in class. and you're going to use macros in the solution for the module, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, so the whole idea is, this is really about automation and how to structure data. So the module 3 is about automation and how to structure data. And one of the ways we automate is to create our own custom code, right? So if we have to do something repetitive over and over again, we can write statements in a program that will do it for us every time, every time, every time. And in Office applications, we can do the same thing with macros. And all right, so what I'd like you to do, Malikwa, do you remember where to go to turn on the developer ribbon?
Yes, I do.
All right. Yes. Now, one thing I've noticed is that in some versions, okay, can you stop sharing now?
My screen?
Yes, stop sharing. So what I'd like to do is share my screen, and I want to show everybody this. When I open my Excel, I have a different version of Excel. And can you see what it's saying right here? I have an automate option. So it could be that if you're in Excel and it's a newer version of Excel, and you go to turn on the developer, let's see. In newer versions of Excel, when you go to turn that on, and you go to, where is it? Okay, I'm a little, yeah, this is weird. Let me go back to Excel. Go into account, options. Let's just open up a new blank workbook. Yeah, I don't see the same option to add the ribbon. I don't see the options here. And I'm using Microsoft 365 Excel instead of Excel like 2019, or so I'm using version 2308. So what may happen is that I have to let's see, get add-ins. No, that's not what I want. I should be able to change my ribbon. Maybe it's a right click, and I have to right click the ribbon or something like that. It could be that my Adobe Acrobat was adding a menu and that changed some things. In any case, in the latest version of Microsoft 365, if that's the version you're running with, it has an automate menu instead of a developer's menu. And the option to record actions is still there. So in Access, so what I want to do is open up Access. Let's open a blank database. Database tools is about objects, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit. But if I want to turn on the developer's option for macros, I'll have to find that, because I don't see where that's listed here. Manage update options, insider. Yeah, that's peculiar. So they've moved my cheese. This is one reality of scientific computing or computing applications in general, is that sometimes when they change versions, they hide things, right? And so what do you do to find how to turn on that option. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can find that information right now. Let's demonstrate how to get out of this mess when you load a new version and there isn't anything in here, right? I should be able to find an option. Tell me what you want to do. Display, developer ribbon, or macro, right? So here's running macros, named macros. Oh, wow. So if I search for that, it can give me a macro name. Let's create a new one. Test table build. Yeah, that's for previously created macros. I don't want to run a macro, I want to create a macro. So create macro. Nine results. That's general turn, create a macro that runs. So macros are database objects, and maybe those are already built in. Create a macro, that's what it is. I'm using the create menu and I'm creating a macro. So macro is found off of the create menu because it's a database object, just like tables are objects, queries are objects, reports are objects, forms are objects. So let's walk through some basics about databases right now. I've just, let's start from scratch. So I opened, I won't save this. So in assignment 3.3, you're using macros, and you're going to want to be able to understand. So if you open the details on 3.3 and it shows you where to turn on the developer menu and that's not showing, then it could be you have a new version and it's in a slightly different location. Does anyone have any questions at this point before we proceed with database stuff? So I'm going to create a table in Access, and if I create one big data set, one big table, like an Excel spreadsheet, that's called a flat data set, meaning it's not connected to anything else. All right. But what happens if I create a table? And I'm going to reference this, and I'm going to put these two tables together, right? So I'm going to build two tables, one called turtle sightings, right? And I'm going to use this a lowercase t so that I'm cued into the fact that this is a database object that's a table. Over here, I have a database object called a query. It's a set of commands to filter or sort or search for, or to process or calculate based on the data criteria, right? So that's what queries do. I can build forms that give me a nice interface where I can enter information or view information, and then I can work reports. So essentially, a database management system is a kind of a programming environment. And the most basic database object of all is the table. And I want to describe the table because I'm practicing self-description. And I'm going to use the lowercase t so that when I'm looking at a database object, when I'm looking at the raw object, I know, oh, that's a table. This is a Q for query, F for forms, right? M for macros, R for reports, right? Each of those are database objects. So I'm going to go ahead and create. When I create, I'm going to use autofill numbers, whole numbers for citing ID. Then I'm going to create a species lookup table, right? So I'll have has anyone ever heard of genus and species in biology? Kingdom, phylum, subphylum, class, order, family. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, it does.
Right? So animal kingdom, plant kingdom, right? Kingdom, phylum, all that. Kingdom, phylum, subphylum, class, order, family, species, genus, species. So when you're looking at a different type of turtle, a green turtle has a specific Latin name. And what we want to do is make it easy for people when they see a turtle to reference the common name or the Latin name. And in this one table, I'm going to put that information and I'm going to list it just once. So for a leatherback turtle, right? I'm going to enter this genus and species information, but I'm also going to put the common name leatherback. And I'll build this simple table so that anytime I need that information, it's tied into or related to the species ID, right? So I've created a key field, a key column, if you will, called turtle species ID in this lookup table. And I also have a field in this table that's called turtle species ID. And I want you to notice that there's a one-to-one correlation between the name here and the name there. The only difference is that this species ID, when you see a key there, it means that this is sort of like the anchor for the table. A key field is a field where there's only one unique entry. So when I create my species lookup table, I'm populating that with information and there's only one species and common name for each record in that table. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to build the species lookup table, and I'm just going to focus on that right now in Access. So when I go to Access, I'm going to open up a blank database, and I'm just going to create a blank database, and I'm going to go to the create options, and I want to create a table. Now there's already a table in here, so Access says, okay, if you're going to start a if you're going to start a database, you have to begin with something, and it has to be a table. The most basic database object is the table. And instead of using table 1, I'm going to use what I just showed you, right? T species lookup. So I'm going to change the table name by renaming it. I'm going to go into design view, and now I get a chance to name the table. So it's T species. I know this is really, really small. Does everybody see what I'm doing here? So I'm gonna look at the design view of this table. I'm gonna name the table T species lookup, and there's the key. That little icon right there is actually a key. This little black streak right here, if you zoom in, that's what it is. It's an auto number field, and I'm going to call this, what am I going to call this? Turtle species ID. It's just an ID number, that's all it is. I'm going to hit the tab key, and now I'll come down to the next field name. And And all I'm doing now is finishing the design of my table. As soon as I'm finished the design, I'm going to go into the view of it so I can use it. So I have to have common species name and Latin genus species. Common species name. And the database knows, okay, because of the name, the field name is probably text information. Now I could use the memo data type, but that would be if I have like a really large, like long text or short text. Long text is like a memo. You can type a very large amount of information in there. I'm going to leave it short text, which means I have up to 255 characters. But I know I don't need a field that big, so I'm going to say the common species name isn't going to be any more than 50 characters. Okay, that's just so I can save data and I don't leave myself open to hackers. Here I'm going to put the Latin genus species. Actually, I'm going to say common turtle name instead of species name. Common turtle name. There we go. And Latin genus species, right? So once again, I'm going to change this to like 50 characters because I know there's no genus and species combination that's going to use more than 50 letters or numbers, right? So when I say characters. So at this point, what I'll do now is view my table. And I'll save this now that I've made some changes. And what I have here is the beginning of a table. And so I can start turning, somebody give me the common turtle name, like leatherback, right? Leatherback turtle. What is the Latin name for leatherback turtle? Does anyone know? We have any biologists in the audience? Are you still seeing my screen? How do we pronounce that? Dermochellis? Dermochellis coriacea or coriacea? Dermochellis coriacea. I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. I think the genus is always capitalized when you're breaking all that out. So yeah, sea turtles is the Dermochellis family, and this particular species is coriacea, right? Or coriacea. Tomato. Somebody in biology is gonna get upset with me for that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and hit my tab button, and now I have, now notice the turtle species ID number. If I go to the next one and I type in something like green turtle, and just to be, I put in green turtle. Let's go back to this. We're almost done. Green sea turtle. So this is Chelonia mitis. Not sure if the CH is hard C or CH. It's Chelonia or Chelonia. I guess it depends on which language you're speaking. Now watch what happens as soon as I entered this green turtle, now the turtle species ID record number, which is an auto-filling field, it entered number 2, and I didn't have to do that. All I did was use it. Okay, can everybody see what I'm doing now?
Yes.
Okay, so let's come full circle and then we're done. When I build the other table for sightings, every sighting is going to have a unique ID because every sighting is distinctly different. it involves different turtles, it involves different locations, it involves different times and dates. So the GPS coordinates are unique, the date and time is unique, and the turtle that's sighted is unique, right? So that sighting has its own record. The sighting has its own record ID or number. I could have 15 sightings in a day. If I have 20 tomorrow, that means I have 35 records of sightings. And each one has a unique sighting ID from 1 to 35. I don't have to keep repeating all that information about type, because if I create the relationship or join between these two tables, when I build the form for people to use on their tablets, which is really cool, takes very little time, takes 5 minutes to build a form, and then you tie it into this information, then people can enter the date and the time, the observer name, and all they have to do is click a button to hit the turtle. All they have to do is hit the button to hit a pull down to select the species by common name, right? They don't have to type it in, the formal species name, but they have a record of it because it's cross-referenced. It's related to this table. And I only have to have it here once, but I can view that information every time I'm looking at the turtle's name, because the people who are citing these turtles are giving the turtles names. When they ID a turtle, they could call one Bartholomew and the other one Betsy, right? And that has a specific, we could have another field here that's turtle ID, right? So the citing could have a separate table for the turtles by name and turtle ID, not citing ID, turtle ID. So each turtle could have their own ID number, just like you have your own social security number. Does everybody understand what I'm saying here? All right. What we'll do here is stop sharing. And I'm going to stop this segment of our review. On Thursday, we will pick up the review of the remaining content in Module 3. If you would, please, if you haven't been to if you haven't reconciled for the Module 1 assessment or the Module 2 assessment, right? At this time, you need to go ahead and reconcile your answers for the Module 2 assessment. And what we'll do is we'll put the retake for the Module 2 assessment out there. By the end of this week, we'll also put out the, if we've completed a review of all the rest of the material, we'll go ahead and put out the assessment for Module 3 so that you can log your first attempt of the Module 3 assessment. I just wanted to remind people, some of you aren't doing the reconciliation, and if you want to take the retest, you want to correct your errors. Now, one of the things that I should tell you is, in order to reconcile, you should click on My Grades, then find this assessment. When you click on the header of that assessment in My Grades, a linked number, your score, will appear. A linked number will appear. You click that, and you can see your assessment, in case you hadn't ever seen that before. Based on the information that was provided today, does anyone have any observations or comments to share before we close our session? Thank you for joining us today. Let me know if you have any other problems when you engage the assignments and solution. Take care for now. Stay dry and safe. Don't let Tropical Storm Felipe freak anybody out in your home, and we'll see you Thursday.